Good morning. I woke early this morning. I was motivated. But in the course of the morning, something's being processed. And, ironically, it's not about the impeachment. It's only tangentially related to the impeachment. It's about something else. It hasn't been disclosed yet. But I just want to say a few things formally, even if you've been crying this morning. A, I personally have never agreed to be in any intelligence role, in any military organization, or in any secret service role. As a matter of fact, I twice declared my intent to be a candidate in an election process, even though I was homeless. And while there's all of these crypto feeds, and my communications are generally interfered with, when I would actually talk to people about my campaign or my ideas, I'd usually get very good reception. People were interested. It's only when I needed to interface online and or understood that there was a need for other people who claimed that they were in public office or in a public administration role, when there was a need for them to respond and they didn't. And then later, the inclination was that I was supposed to understand they had already decided that I was going to be made available for their campaigns. I never agreed to that. As a matter of fact, when I put forward my actual websites and my actual promotional or my actual campaigning materials, I made it very explicit. If you're a candidate for political office and you're under threat of violence, or you're in a situation where someone's trying to extort you to agree to illegal activity, you have a right to protect yourself. And I would not agree to conspire with anybody to intentionally undermine, threaten to assassinate, or assassinate another candidate in order to promote my own campaign. That's why in 2019, when other candidates were cooperating with that specific methodology, a methodology which, by the way, resulted in the murder of Elijah Cummings, I withdrew. I withdrew at least until a time later where I understood that there was enough of a provocative atmosphere where I could be direct and forthright with the understanding I had that people were engaging in hedging strategies that banked on the potential murder of an opposition candidate. I never relented on that, and I never tried to engage in anything deceptive with the understanding that that was ongoing. And if I understood that there was an actionable offense in occurrence, and that other people in pursuit of their political campaigns were engaging in actions that could potentially call that terminal hedge, I called them out and let them know that if I had to, they had already delivered on their intent to move forward on their policy and then cover up for the murder of what would otherwise be their colleagues. I would expect nothing less from anybody else. So that's to say that no matter what you're doing, nobody has the right, unless you have a signed agreement where the terms were upfront disclosed and agreed upon. Nobody has the right to say you weren't supposed to disclose because you were somebody else's secret service. That's not the way it works. You don't get to identify somebody that's your political opposition and say, you know what, I like what they have, but I don't want them in the public realm because they could unseat me. You don't get to do that. If I'm guilty of a crime, then prosecute it. Which brings up the other matter, which is that the monopoly on the capacity to prosecute crimes in this country needs to end. There's been a miserable failure of the Department of Justice and for local prosecutorial offices to do their job. The political hedging that the members of the judicial branch have engaged in support of aiding and abetting a cover up of public corruption in the legislative branches is so pervasive that we are nearly politically bankrupt in the judicial branch. This is apparently understood internationally and will be used to our demise if we do not immediately hold them to task for their monopoly and their abuse of the monopolization of the judicial branch. It is unacceptable. And it starts with them understanding their primary purpose is not to fulfill quotas in somebody's hedge fund. They need to be forthright and honest about what the financing situation is when it comes to the Department of Justice and prosecutions for federal offenses. Because them refusing to, thus far, has led to an exercise of judgment around priorities and prosecutions that is completely untenable. It is not acceptable. They're prosecuting the wrong people for the wrong crimes, and we're falling far short of what we actually need. Now, I'm hoping that whatever ends up happening today ends up clearing out and moving along. But just so you know, in 2017, there was a bill that was pending in Congress. I believe it was sponsored primarily by Republicans to make a certain adjustment to whistleblower statutes regarding confidentiality or anonymity of whistleblower reports. Let me say something. As somebody that has been involved in multiple levels, including as a homeless woman in a domestic violence shelter, and somebody that understands she was investigating organized crime, as well as somebody that used to be involved with a compliance role at a public health department, I absolutely positively believe that anonymity for whistleblower reports is actually one of the most dangerous things there is. It may protect you on a particular level, but it is very easy for local interlocutors, especially the police, who have access to local surveillance technologies they can abuse, to identify you and then to chastise you and to otherwise impair your capacity to participate in society or achieve due process for yourself while nobody else knows your name. And they take your report and they give it to somebody else, and that person uses it as their political capital to get reelected. And they don't get back to you, and they don't get to the point. And over again, it ends up circulating as currency without actually resolving the issue. It's important that if you're a whistleblower, that you're protected and that you have support. They murdered whistleblowers for years, including those in some of the highest positions of accountability. There was a strategic campaign of murdering people that called out fraud and malfeasance in a variety of sectors that went all the way to the president. Now, at that time, I was too young to actually have a stake in what that meant. But as I was becoming a journalist, that was the culture. And now, more than 25 years later, where are we? We're in a situation where literally, at least in the state of Texas, they use whistleblower reports for the retirement system, and they never get around to actually fixing the problem. If you actually track it, and you keep track of it yourself, and don't just do that thing where you get intimidated and moved on, you realize they owe you. They owe us. They owe the people. They were required to do something more than steal it and use it for an election campaign that was way too expensive and thus far has come very, very far short of delivering. So I just want you to know that that's not only what I need to, understand for myself and remind myself, especially while we're in a situation where it's been permitted to kidnap me and allow me to be completely removed from any accountability, any response, any charges, and any rights to due process. Because I would believe that about you too, no matter who you are. Nobody has the right to kidnap you, steal your life, and then say, well, you weren't supposed to disclose because you were so-and-so Secret Service. That's... No, not acceptable. And if you're in the actual Secret Service and somebody is slandering your role and your organization, you need to do something. You understand? If you're actually in Secret Service, you need to do something about people that think they can abuse whatever it is that thinks they have access to what you have to offer and kidnap women and try to force them into prostitution while they steal their lives and destroy the country.